This is Long Way to the Top, and I'm your host, Shane Bryan. My next guest is someone whose songs have quietly outlasted fashion, hype, and entire movements. As the frontman of Lloyd Cole and the Commotions, he emerged in the mid-'80s, well, probably the early 80s actually, with a debut that was smart, romantic, and unusually well-read. Rattlesnakes remains a touchstone for a literate pop guitar era. Since then, he's avoided the nostalgia circuit, choosing instead to keep writing, keep changing, and keep asking different questions of himself as an artist. And he's back in Australia with a set that draws from across that long arc from the Commotions through to his latest solo work. Lloyd Cole, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm reasonable, thank you.
Yeah, after all of that, what an introduction, and you're just reasonable.
Yeah, reasonable. It's better than something, and it's not as good as great.
And it's better than miserable, isn't it? Hey,
it is indeed.
Who would want to be miserable? You've done it. You've had an incredible life, and I guess I want to start by saying, when people describe your work as timeless, do you take that as a compliment, or does that slightly miss the point of what you were trying to do at the time?
No, we were trying to make music that you couldn't tell when we made it. That was definitely part of the idea. And sometimes when I'm listening to records that I've made, for example, my first solo record, which I think is pretty great.
Yeah.
But you can tell it was made in the early 1990s. The drums were too loud.
Yeah. Yeah.
But with the Commotions, we got lucky. We were working with great people. We were on good form for a couple of years. And yeah, I think that record could have been made in the late 60s or the early 2000s. Who would know?
It was such an incredible time. And I was talking with someone about this last night. That early 80s in, the UK and Scotland and Ireland was such an amazing time for music.
It was great for us. The early 70s were great. The early 90s were great in Pacific Northwest. So yeah, I consider myself to be very lucky to have been in Glasgow in 1982 to 83, because literally in that city at that time, if you went to Nico's bar on Sauchiehall Street and you weren't trying to be an artist or an architect or a writer or a musician, you wouldn't get a girlfriend. I mean, the city was just so vibrant, so much was going on.
Yeah.
There was pressure to be creative, which was very healthy.
Yeah, yeah. And it was a creative time. I mean, for a debut like Rattlesnakes, it just had such a vibrancy about it. It was so uniquely different.
I guess so. I mean, we just stumbled upon something we could do, and all of a sudden we were doing it in front of quite a few people, and we were incredibly excited to be doing that.
Yeah.
We went from literally hoping to do something to doing it almost overnight.
Yeah.
And we were lucky enough that we were able to sort of keep our heads that first year, and we were lucky not to write too many awful songs. Nearly everything we wrote that year was good. Yeah.
The early songs, they were full of sort of cultural and literary references. Were you consciously pushing against the idea of the typical pop lyrics of the time?
No, but I was reading all sorts of stuff. I was reading Tom Wolfe, I was reading Joan Didion. And I sort of wanted to think of myself as a writer as well as a singer. I think in retrospect that was quite ludicrous because, I was a pop singer who liked to read. But I think the cultural references, people who didn't like me at the time used to say I name dropped. And I personally think that a phrase like Grace Kelly Carr in just 3 words evokes something which is quite cinematic. Yeah. I think everybody can picture a Grace Kelly Carr, and it only takes 3 words. Yeah. So, frankly, I was quite pleased with the way I was using these references.
Yes. And I think also, too, when you're writing songs that have references back to the things that that maybe influenced you as an artist, it gives people a bit of an insight into your own psyche.
Well, maybe, but I mean, people think that I read Simone de Beauvoir. I read a tiny, tiny bit of Simone de Beauvoir. I didn't read Norman Mailer at all, really. I gave up on The Naked and the Dead. But Norman Mailer is there because he represented the ultimate macho writer.
Yeah.
So if you really want to get straight, read Norman Mailer.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Now, I guess there are songs that that were written during that era too, that people have really carried with them throughout the years and throughout the decades. I mean, what's your relationship with the songs today?
Mostly excellent. Those very early ones, anyway. I personally think, as a band, we got lucky not to make any terrible records, but I do think we got a little bit worse, and then a little bit worse. And then it was probably a good thing that we didn't make a fourth record. But I do think we also set the bar very high with that first record.
Yes.
So no, my relationship with almost all the songs is great. Not all of them are easy to sing at my age.
Right.
But when you're on stage, it's theater. You get yourself in the right frame of mind and you sing it. And you think about the audience as opposed to whether you're particularly comfortable singing these 23-year-old words age 65. You just put that out of your mind and you get on with it because you know that they do resonate still with people and they are part of people's lives. There are obviously going to be a few songs that you're just not comfortable singing, but I think I usually manage to sing most of the ones that people don't go away very often complaining that I didn't play this or I didn't play that.
Yeah. I was talking with Tim Finn from, of course, Crowded House and Split Ends. I don't know whether you've come across them. And of course, Split Ends just got back together. And my question was, when you go back and revisit those older songs, do you play them the way that they were played originally, or do you mix it up? Now, he said, no, I play it the way that they were originally written because that's what people want to hear. Is that what you do, or do you mix it up a bit? Do you change it about?
I do mix it up a bit. I can't play Rattlesnakes in a solo show.
Yeah.
Just going like the original one is very up tempo. No, I actually found a way. I do Rattlesnakes almost a cappella these days.
Yeah.
And I just take the melody and I find a way to sing it that makes sense for me now. Perfect Skin, I'm about halfway in between the two. Very few are exactly like they were. And it doesn't make sense for them to be exactly like they were because I'm just up there on my own.
Yeah.
If I'm playing with a band, sure, we'll look at how close we can get to the original if we feel like it. But I don't have the Commotions anymore if I am playing with a band. So I don't particularly want to try and sound like the Commotions if I'm not the Commotions.
Yeah.
So what we try and do as a band is we try and say, well, this is what we sound like now. And when we were the Commotions, we knew what we sounded like. So when we tried to play Glory by Television, we didn't try and sound like Television. We tried to sound like us playing Glory.
Yes.
And so, these days I just try and sound like me playing those songs. And I think that I never get so far from the recordings that people have a problem with it, I don't think. And I think also there's the audience for my shows when I'm playing a concert where people have come to see me. Most of the people know most of those songs.
Yes.
So they have that they know it. So if I play something that's a little bit different, they might actually go, oh, wow, that was interesting. But they know what I'm referring to.
Yes.
Because they've already got the information in the first place. Sometimes I worry when people come to see me who don't know that original piece of music. And this a cappella Rattlesnakes, that might make no sense to them at all.
But they may walk away from that going, wow, what an incredible song. And because it's so different from the original.
Well, I hope so. And really, I mean, I do everything I can to make the show as good as I can because it's not about me. It's about the songs and my relationship with the audience.
Now, your more recent work feels a very stripped back, sort of more reflective sound. Do you think that your relationship with songwriting has changed as you've gotten older, or is it the same process, just different concerns now?
Probably a bit of both. There's also the issue of ground already having been covered.
Yeah.
So I don't want to become one of those people that sings the same song over and over again. But I do seem to be able to find the way to find new angles to look at the same things that still interest me, if they do.
Yeah.
I would say I was motivated when I was younger, very much motivated by a desire to be something like my heroes, to be famous, I guess, to be honest. And I don't have that type of motivation anymore. The motivation I have now is, if I'm going to create new music, it has to add to my canon, or whatever you want to call the body of work that I've got. And it has to make that body of work better. So I think it's necessarily slower.
Yeah. And talking about your heroes, I think we all kind of, doesn't matter what you do, we all kind of look to the heroes in whatever field that we're in, until we realize that we actually don't need them, that we've got everything that we need inside ourselves.
Sort of.
Yeah.
I think you need something to aspire to.
Yeah.
And I think, on the rare occasions when people ask me for advice, I still say the same as Picasso, which is copy your heroes. And if you've got a voice of your own, it will be heard. And if you don't have a voice of your own, you'll find out and you'll need to do something else.
Who were your heroes?
My musical heroes? I had so many, but I suppose the big heroes when I was getting started: Bob Dylan, Isaac Hayes, David Bowie, Steve Cropper on the guitar, Lou Reed on the guitar, the Velvet Underground, the Byrds, T-Rex, contemporaries that we enjoy. I loved ABC at the time.
Yeah.
We loved Orange Juice.
Yeah.
It was great to be in Glasgow at that time. I remember loving the Scars and the Skids. So I was a fan.
What about contemporaries of the time? Like, how did you get on with other bands like Your Simple Minds?
We didn't really interact very much with other bands unless we were meeting them doing TV shows or something. We were part of the postcard scene in Glasgow, and we were considered almost imposters when we were first getting started, because we weren't willfully twee, and our sound was a bit more robust. I think we were not indie enough for some people. I think in retrospect, people look back and go, yeah, it's a little strange that a band from Glasgow would make a record that is as solid. And that was just because we were lucky the five of us got together. I don't think I would ever have imagined when we were starting in late 82, 83 that I would have ever been lucky enough to get a drummer like Stephen. Stephen was almost in the Clash. Stephen was really big, solid sound. And that gave the rest of us something really solid that we could play around. I think, we were just very lucky that the five of us got together, because we were not school friends.
Yeah. Like a lot of these bands, they were like, oh, yeah, we grew up at school, we did this. But you had to find your feet, really. You had to learn to get to.
We did. And each of the five members of the Commotions brought something very different to the table. None of us really covered the same bases. So that's what made us good. And it's also what probably meant that we couldn't last that long.
Yeah.
Because we found this thing we could do in 1983, 84, and we managed to expand on it somewhat over the next few years. But by 87, we didn't really know what we wanted to be. We were a failing democracy.
Yeah. Is there a favorite time period for you? Because you've had so many different changes throughout the course of your life in terms of musical styles and that. Is there one that sort of sticks out as your favorite?
No. But the new beginnings are the most, they were the most exciting times. So obviously to actually be in that band and to be in the studio making Rattlesnakes and for it to be really happening.
Yeah.
It probably never got any more exciting than that. And to be on Top of the Pops with your first single.
Yeah. Incredible.
Yeah, really incredible. And then when the band split up, I'm sure a lot of people don't believe me, but I really didn't know if I could make records on my own. Because my job in the Commotions, I was by far the least talented musician.
Yeah.
I was the ideas guy. I said, listen to this. This is going to go with that. This will do that. And it wasn't until after I left the band that I realized I'd actually learned to be not a bad musician by being around four great musicians.
Yeah.
So when trying to make demos for that first solo record, I said, oh, I can program drums. I didn't know I could do that. Oh, I can write string arrangements. I didn't know I could do that. And that was almost as exciting as the beginning of the Commotions.
Yeah.
And also the fact that I'd moved to New York to do it. It was very exciting.
Yeah.
And I would say probably the next one was when I withdrew from the mainstream and became more of a troubadour, traveling around playing acoustic shows, trying almost not to make a new album until the songs were really beating on my head saying, write me, record me. And that was an album called Music in a Foreign Language, which a lot of my hardcore people think is my best record. And I think it might be too.
Yeah.
And then probably the last time was the album Guesswork, when I finally plucked up the courage to make a record that sounds a bit like what I listen to. I put the guitars away and I knew I'd been putting it off because I knew how difficult it was going to be, because I knew it was going to be me on my own in a room again for a very long time.
Yeah.
And it's rewarding, but it's not always fun. When I finally played a few of the song ideas to Chris Hughes and said, is this really worth doing? He said, absolutely. Then I sort of put my head down and made the record. That was also a similar kind of, oh, I can do this. Great.
Yeah.
And the in-between records, I feel a little sorry for them because I'm not as them.
Now, look, final question. When you hear sort of younger artists now, what do you listen for first? Is it the voice? Is it the intent? Is it the honesty in their lyrics?
I certainly don't care about honesty.
Yeah.
If somebody can make me think, if somebody can make me want to keep listening, I don't care about honesty.
Yeah.
It's the delivery. I hear a lot of people singing who don't sound like they have any really good idea of what they exactly want to be other than famous.
Yeah.
And I kind of understand that, because that kind of is what it's like to start, but you've got to find something that's yours.
Yeah.
And if you just sound like anybody else, then I don't really understand why you'd want to be doing it. So, I'll hear something every now and again. Like I spent a bit of time the other day listening to Geese, and I went, okay, I get that, but it's not really doing it for me, but I could see how it might do it for my son.
Yeah.
On the other hand, I heard, I've been listening for a little bit, but I got there's a new one coming out, but the last Aldous Harding record.
Right.
She's got something for me.
Yeah.
She's got something like PJ Harvey. She's got a unique voice, and when she starts singing, I want to listen. That's the kind of music I want to hear. Most of the time, in all honesty, the music that I listen to for pleasure these days doesn't have a singer. Yeah,
just the music.
That's from Callie Malone.
You mentioned PJ Harvey. I have to say, we've got an artist in Australia. If you get a chance to hear her when you're here, her name is Meg Washington.
Okay, I won't forget that.
She is. It's that voice. It makes you want to keep listening, and hearing her voice more, and the melodies and how she puts it together is just phenomenal. So, yeah, I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I'll be. I might well be bedridden tomorrow. So.
Well, look, thank you for joining me on the show. I'm going to post all of in the description of the show. I'll put all of the dates for Australia, and hope your tour goes well. You know, it's great to have you back in Australia and playing. You know, everything from your beginnings right through till now.
Yeah, well, thank you. Yeah, last night was the first show of this new concert, which is an electric solo show, and it was terrifying. And the sound check went so badly. I was the most nervous I've been in recent memory. I can't remember being more nervous, but I got through it. It went well, and I woke up this morning thinking, "Great, I got through the worst. Tonight will be great." And now, you know what? I think it feels a bit better with a bit of talking, and I took some gargling stuff a few minutes ago. Fingers crossed.
Awesome. Lloyd Cole, thank you for joining me on the show. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. Cheers.
Hit plus or follow to subscribe to the podcast, and head over to Facebook at The Long Way to the Top Podcast and give us a like. Keep on rocking, and I'll catch you on the next episode of Long Way to the Top.